This podcast and content posted by Dr. Judith Joseph is presented solely for general informational, educational, and entertainment purposes. The use of information on this podcast or materials linked from this podcast or website is at the user's own risk. It is not intended as a substitute for the advice of a physician, professional coach, psychotherapist, or other qualified professional diagnoses or treatment. Users should not disregard or delay in obtaining medical advice for any medical or mental health condition they may have and should seek the assistance of their healthcare professionals for any such conditions.
Spirit is a doctor of psychology, nationally certified counselor, and licensed professional counselor. She is one of 64 clinicians in the country certified to conduct custody and mental health evaluations and serve as an expert witness in court proceedings.
When you get a divorce, you get to leave that parent, but the child is forced to navigate then a relationship with a parent that has a mental health condition with no support. And so if you don't give your child therapy in order to master the coping skills that go along with having a parent that has depression or post-traumatic stress disorder or bipolar disorder or narcissistic personality disorder or any of these other disorders that need care, then you leave your child to be subjected to all of this by themselves.
While Spirit's work with clients focuses heavily on embracing interactions, resolving trauma, and improving overall daily functioning, Spirit also works with clients in high-conflict co-parenting relationships, is an ordained marriage officiant, and facilitates community trainings related to the prevention of child sexual abuse. Spirit is passionate about eliminating stigmas associated with mental health and believes that men, women, and children of all ages could benefit from routine mental health care. She has appeared on more than 200 shows and networks, including being the host of Love Goals on OWN. Dr. Spirit joins us on The Vault to discuss how to navigate co-parenting when you're co-parenting with a narcissist and how to talk to your children about divorce. You will not want to miss this impactful episode of The Vault.
I just want to thank you so much for coming on the podcast today and joining me in the vault.
Please, this is so awesome. And it's a real vault.
Yes.
I walked in, I'm like, oh my gosh, that door is everything. Everything.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you and I met a couple of years ago when we did a talk for a huge network, and we're really helping people to navigate their stress, their work-life balance. And I just remember you talking about cultural competency in such a powerful way and how it's important to choose a provider that understands you, that you feel comfortable with. How do people go about choosing a culturally competent provider?
Yeah, I think that that's such an excellent question because oftentimes we think that culture is just as long as you look like me, then that's who I need to go with. Right off the bat, that poses a problem first and foremost because in my line of work, 86% of clinicians do not look like me as a person of color. And then if we get down into a person that is literally African American, Black, or however you choose to identify, we're talking 4% of all mental health providers are Black or African American. And then when we talk about what culture is, just because you have this pigmentation or this melanation does not necessarily mean we're the same. We come from all over the world. So if you are from Jamaica and I'm from the United States, culturally we may be different. If you are from New York and I am from Atlanta, culturally, we may be different. So when we talk about what does it mean to have somebody who has cultural competency, what that means is what does it mean to be in alignment with you understand my problems, you understand my journey, not just where I'm trying to go, but also where I've been. And if you don't know it, do you have what it takes to hear it and to receive it in an unbiased way that is going to deliver me to where it is that I want to go?
I'm glad that you said that because I don't think a lot of people realize that.
Mm-hmm.
And when I was a resident, I taught a course in China to Chinese psychiatrists, and I was teaching them how to be culturally competent with ethnic minorities within China.
Come on.
I mean, and I never thought, like in my entire medical school training, that I would be in China teaching Chinese doctors how to be culturally competent to Chinese subcultures, right?
Come on.
So even if someone doesn't look like you,
Yes.
if they're invested in learning about who you are, your experience, and helping you, and in being a culturally competent provider, it is possible. It's not going to be seamless, right?
But it's possible.
It is.
And I think oftentimes it's rooted in, I am here to understand you, which is really the foundation of what our work is supposed to be too, right? It's not, you are coming to me because I have all the answers. No, you are coming to me because I have the tools to help you discover the answers that lie within you. And so it's a twofold thing. Yes, the general public needs to know how to find the right person. But on the other side, as professionals, we need to know how to be the right people. So there's work to do on both sides. And I think that everybody needs to constantly be having a conversation around what is cultural competency? What is cultural humility? Because that is where the field is even transitioning to. It's not enough to just be competent. Do I have enough humility to recognize that as the provider, I don't know anything except for what you tell me, and I'm there simply to reflect you back to you in ways that allow you to see you better? That's what it's about.
Recognizing your own bias, because
Oh
when my first experience with therapy, my therapist was an older white man, and I was like on the Upper East Side of Manhattan, and I'm like, what is he going to understand about me? I'm from Trinidad. I came to America.
Come on.
But he was one of the best therapists I've ever had.
Listen, my best therapist, and I have had a lot, and I will continue to have therapists. I pray that I'm going to have this one forever, though. I've had him for several years, and I told him, if you die, then I'm going to resurrect you and kill you because I need you, okay? And he is biracial. He is Asian American and white, and he has been the best therapist that I have ever had in my life. Now, I will say he is married to a sister girl, so, he understands what it's like. It definitely helps with the nuances. Yeah. But what it really has been about is not that he is reflecting me back to me, right? Because different gender, different ethnicities, different parts of the world, everything. But it is he was able to take me into my trauma in ways that he had already been delivered from. So he had not only the tools, but the knowledge. And I think that even as a clinician, he made me better, because he said very early before I started to see clients, he said, Spirit, you will only ever be able to take people as deeply as you yourself have been.
It's so true.
And I was like, oh, then I need to be Jacques Cousteau. Right? I need to be able to go deep, because the work that I want to do. And not every provider is the same kind of provider. The kind of work we're doing, the kind of problems that we're solving, the types of journeys that we want to go on with clients. Not everybody has the depth for that kind of work. So part of the competency is not just, do you look like me? Can you reflect back to me? But can you deliver me? Can you sit with me in the places that really need to be healed, that are going to yield those outcomes? Or are we just doing kind of some of the surface work? I'm having some problems. Can you teach me a little stress management? Can you teach me a little anger management? Or can you help me get to the root of why those things exist? And can you help me heal them?
And one of the questions I get asked a lot on social media is, how do you find the right provider? Should I be doing group therapy? Should I be doing one-on-one?
Yeah.
Should I be doing teletherapy?
Yeah.
And there's so many different types of providers. There's so many different reasons people need, someone to go to for mental health issues. You and I are talking about how sometimes it's like court mandated. So there are even those subspecialties. So what do you tell someone when it's like, okay, where do I even begin?
I think for a lot of people, what the real issue is they think that they have to have all the pieces figured out. And that's the part that we as providers can help with. So I tell clients all the time, you don't have to know what you need. You just have to know what you're experiencing. And then as clinicians, it's our job to tell you what we believe that the right fit is. Everybody is not made for group therapy, but not every kind of group therapy is the same. So a psychoeducation group, which the average person won't even know what that is going to look very different than a support group. It's going to look very different than a process group. And so based upon where you are in your journey, based upon what it is in terms of the work that you're wanting to do, based upon the type of outcomes that you're wanting to see, that is where we as professionals build a solid plan for you. So sometimes people will come to me and I'll say, oh, okay, so that sounds like you may need some family systems work if your family's willing to do that work, or you may need some couples work, but as a couple, you have these issues, but you may also need some individual care at the same time. So what we're looking at is, how do we deliver the best treatment plan for you based upon where you are and what we think that you need, and the motivation of you and everybody else involved to really be able to effectuate that care. So what I tell people is, you don't have to know. You don't have to. You just have to simply pick up a phone and have a conversation and then ask that provider, so based upon what I've told you, what do you think I should do? What do you think? And they should be able to give you a really solid answer. And if they can't, that's an indication that they're probably not the best provider for you.
That's true. And
Mm-hmm.
also, a lot of people have negative experiences with
Listen.
therapy. I treat children and adolescents and adults, and sometimes the adults come and they're like, I didn't want to put my kid in therapy because I had such a terrible experience.
Yes.
They may have had parents who weaponized the
Oh,
therapy
yeah.
because of a messy divorce,
Mm-hmm.
or for other reasons.
Yeah.
But people have bad experiences in their childhood and they don't want to return to therapy
Yeah.
in adulthood, even though they would probably benefit from it.
Yeah.
And I know this is the type of work that one of the areas that you have expertise in. It's really how to deal with high conflict situations, how to deal with high conflict situations, especially with messy divorces or court-ordered mandates for someone coming in like yourself to determine, who's fit for parenting or what's the best decision for the child. So tell us about that work, because I don't think a lot of people know about that area of mental health because it's kind of taboo to talk about. People get weird about divorce and conflict, but it's so important. So tell us about
especially when you
expertise there.
talk about competency, right? This is a
Yes.
whole area that people don't even realize. Like, do you know that there are therapists who specialize in separation, who specialize in divorce? And you go, specialize in separation? Yeah. If you don't even know that as you're thinking about, should we go forward in our marriage or in our relationship? Should we think about divorce? Should we take a break? If you don't know that there are people here to help you build out rules, if you don't even know that there should be rules of your separation, otherwise you may thwart your whole opportunity to ever even have a chance to come back together or be cool on the other side of divorce. Like, you don't even realize that we're here, but we exist. So I specialize in looking at separation. I specialize in couples who are going through divorce. I am a certified parenting coordinator working with couples in high conflict co-parenting relationships, which is really roughly about 10% of the population.
Wow.
Yeah. A lot of people, though, they think that it's a lot higher because you can't imagine what high conflict really looks like. So think about, the average couple, because for some reason in our society, we believe that when you get divorced, you can't be friends and we have to choose. Our friends have to choose which friend they're going to be with. The families, now you divorced my daughter or you divorced my son. Now we can't be cool. And so everybody goes to war. And so that is the unfortunate culture. But now think about the worst case scenario, the 10% that are the extremes. That's usually who we work with. Then I also am a certified child custody evaluator, and I'm also a certified forensic mental health evaluator. So I do all kinds of evaluations and work as an expert in the courts and kind of talk to the judges and talk to the parties about what is in the best outcome for the children. And so oftentimes trying to help parents understand the struggles that the children kind of get the burden of and what they inherit as they come into adulthood. Parents don't intend to break their children. They don't intend to wound their children. They actually think that they're fighting for their children. But the scars, all the decades, later, that's what really tells the story about if you could recognize what you are doing to your children in the process, how might you fight differently? How might you fight for them as opposed to fighting against your co-parent?
I was watching a meme recently about this and how high conflict divorces often entail one or more people with personality disorders, be it narcissistic personality disorder or other.
Yeah.
But that those are the ones that where the child ends up having a lot of trauma. And as a part of the ACEs, looking at adverse childhood events, divorce was one of those. Not because divorce is terrible in all cases, but because in those high conflict cases, it can feel as if your world is falling apart when your parents are at war because a child internalizes that. And I don't think a lot of parents realize that when they say negative things about the child's mother or father, that child internalizes that to be a part of themselves.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Because you can't talk about one parent without talking about the child. The child is 50% of both of you, literally. And so what you do is you create what is called a loyalty bind, because you're also communicating to the child, I expect you to feel comfortable with me talking about the other parent like this. And so either through your actual agreement or your silence, I expect you to side with me. So then that gives the child all kinds of feelings of guilt and shame. It changes how they see their parent. It changes how they see themselves. But to your point also, this idea about the number of mental health conditions that are undiagnosed and unpresented in the court, and trying to help parents recognize that when you get a divorce, you get to leave that parent, but the child is forced to navigate then a relationship with a parent that has a mental health condition with no support, with no intervention, with no anything. And so if you don't give your child therapy in order to master the coping skills that go along with having a parent that has depression or post-traumatic stress disorder or bipolar disorder or narcissistic personality disorder or any of these other disorders that need care, then you leave your child to be subjected to all of this by themselves. And if you're in conflict with the other parent, you have no way of assisting or supporting them, and you also trigger so many of the things that will exacerbate the illness. So you're going to war with the parent and they have depression, and then the child has to spend time with a depressed parent. You're going to war with the other parent who has narcissistic personality disorder, and now that is going to make the child have to then rise to the occasion to align with that parent. And then you don't understand why your situation and your relationship with your child is impaired, because now you have parental alienation syndrome that happens on the other side, because that child and the parent are trying to repair their relationship and isolate you. So it is, how do you have people like me come in to say, listen, you will win this battle and lose the war, not only for your family, but also for the souls of your children. And so when I sit down with parents, what I say is, I am trying to prevent your child from being your age sitting with someone like me. And I need your help to do that.
That's
Are
so
you
powerful.
committed?
Mm-hmm.
Are you committed?
Yeah, because you have all these parentified children, and the trauma, attachment disorders, attachment issues, anxious
Yes.
attachment, avoidant
Yes.
attachment. All those things play out in these type of dynamics and get repeated if a child doesn't learn healthy ways to love and cope.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with conflict. We need conflict.
Healthy conflict
Healthy
resolution,
conflict,
right?
yes.
We need to see conflict modeled. I think, even in my own marriage, I have 7 children, by the way. I don't know if you know this.
No, I did not.
Yeah, my husband and I, yes. But one of the things that is important to us is we never chose to fight behind closed doors. One, because we wanted to be accountable to our children. And also, you will fight differently in front of your children if you have enough care and regard for them and their well-being. So that automatically solves a conflict. It changes how you show up. It changes how you speak. And my husband and I were always committed to showing our children, more importantly, that not only are we not committed to the conflict, we are committed to the resolution and the repair with each other. And so our children, to watch how they then interact with each other in conflict, to watch how they interact with their peers in conflict, and to watch what they will accept in terms of treatment for themselves and their well-being. All of that matters. And so parents really need to understand, whether it is intentional in your words, your children are constantly watching your actions, and they will either become you or the other parent based upon how they process and based upon what they come to believe about themselves in this world.
What you said about repair is important. You don't have to be perfect. You can
No.
make mistakes, but
Yes.
repairing is so important.
Yes.
And the whole field of reparenting is about the repair.
Come on, the repair,
Yes.
right? And my idea is prevention. I am so hell-bent on, if we can do this in the front, then we can literally reduce or completely get rid of some of these outcomes. And then if we can just help one family, you are talking about legacy and ripples, because the number of people that those individuals within that family go on to touch, whether it will be their own children across generations, or those that they marry and partner with, or those that they come into relationships with in friendships or in family, or who they will teach, or who they will become the bankers or the cashiers or the bosses for, right? Like, we are globally interconnected, and now more than ever. And so we have to be invested in the early intervention, in the early prevention, in the early understanding of how we treat each other matters. How we're experiencing the world matters. How we see ourselves matter. How we hear other people see us matters from the moment that we come out of the womb. And actually, if we get really serious and get into epigenetics and all of the boring stuff, even before we come into this earth and put our feet on this soil, it really matters.
And as someone who has been an expert in these high conflict situations, a lot of times, there is a situation where one parent is reasonable and the other one is highly not reasonable and very problematic and the behaviors are traumatizing to everyone in the situation. In those cases, because I know you've seen the really high conflict situations, how do you support that one person who is doing the right things, is trying their best, but they unfortunately are paired with someone who is unhealthy? Maybe the person wasn't always that way. Maybe, severe mental illness hit later in life, or substance abuse, or you name it. Or maybe they were always like that. Who knows? But they're dealing with a situation where they're sharing a small child, and they're really doing their best, but they're in this dynamic. What do you say to that person?
Healthy boundaries and a lot of therapy. Therapy. I always have to hit them with the double claps with therapy. But what I like to do is I like to get to the root of where that conflict is. If it is a situation that's environmental, meaning the other parent wasn't always like this, but because we are getting divorced, I have some resentment towards you. I have some unhealed things that are happening. It is how do we first validate that you are not crazy? You are actually having this experience where the other parent is not committed to a healthy co-parenting relationship. So how do we deal with that as a reality? How do we look at that as if it cannot be repaired between the two of you? Then how will we put those healthy boundaries in place for you to co-parent as best as you can, recognizing that at any and every point, that person's entire motivation is going to be focused on thwarting the problem. So I say then we have to begin with the end in mind. We start with an ironclad settlement agreement that has a very well spelled out parenting plan. We think of every last thing that we can think of, and we follow that to the letter when things are not going well. And when they are going well, if we can loosen up those boundaries as time goes on, then we do that. But we want to make sure that legally we have the foundation in place that says we cannot co-parent collaboratively and amicably. So let's just abide by the order. We may have to, unfortunately, engage in what we call parallel parenting, where that says, unfortunately, the two will not cross. You have your time, I have my time, and then we just figure out how to navigate for the betterment of our child. The ideal situation is that we would be able to do it cooperatively and collaboratively. And I always say when parents come to me, I always know the level of conflict that exists between them, because I say, okay, so do you have a parenting order in place? And they say, yeah. And I go, okay, so tell me about it, spell it out. And if they get along well, they'll go, I think you get her on the weekend. We don't know. We got it, but it's like in a box somewhere. I think mine, it probably has dust on it. And then I go, oh, okay. So they know how to navigate. They can communicate. They do what feels natural. They're flexible. They're working together. Now, if they tell me, oh, no, I get her on this day. I'm the first, third, and fifth weekend of the month. It is 6:30, and this is the drop-off time. As a matter of fact, let me give you a copy because I have it right here. I also have one in my glove box, and then I have one at the school and at the doctor's office. Then I know that there is a high level of conflict and that they are working really hard to maintain control and very rigid boundaries. And there is always a reason for that. It's just to understand, is it a legitimate reason and that requires it because the other parent is committed to war with them versus being in collaboration with them towards the benefit of the child? Or is it I'm the person that is wanting to poke and to hurt the situation because I'm hurt too? So where we can repair, we work to do that. But where we cannot, then we put up really firm boundaries that says, if we can all agree that we are here for the betterment of this child and raising a healthy child to become a healthy adult, then great. But sometimes the real danger is we cannot agree. There is some serious mental health conditions that are at play. There is some serious, I want to do harm to the other parent and I'm using this child as a pawn. And unfortunately, if the judge doesn't understand that, then the judge unfortunately threatens everything about the outcome of this family, because the judge may say, I'm just going to go ahead and give everybody equal custody, fair custody, you all figure it out. And they don't recognize that they are condemning this family to decades sometimes of suffering, depending on the age of the child or the children. It can be disastrous for everybody, especially the kids.
I mean, definitely know who to pick in situations like that. I always ask my experts because they've done so much, they've accomplished so much, and oftentimes on the outside, they look like rock stars. They are just killing it. Everything seems so put together.
Oh, gosh.
I asked my experts, tell me about a time when everything looked very put together and no one knew that you were actually struggling, and how did you get through that?
Oh, that's a great question. And listen, I always tell folks, I am the last person to be put on a pedestal. And as a matter of fact, if I even have an inclination that you put me on one, I'm jumping off head first. Like, I need you to recognize that I'm a human just like you. I need you to recognize that we are all on this journey. And where I am now is put together, but it's because I've done my work. So I want to serve as a model to show you what it looks like to go through the painful parts. And I talk about my trauma, I talk about my tragedy, I talk about my resiliency, I talk about my bandwidth constantly, because I think it's necessary for people to recognize not, oh, you're human too, but, oh, it's possible. Peace is possible, recovery is possible, rehabilitation is possible, but more importantly, so is relapse, right? If we don't take care of ourselves, we can find ourselves right back there. And so many of us are trying to wear the mask or really trying to hold it all together and spinning so many plates that we are going to burn out. So I constantly want to model that. But I think for me, it was many years ago in my 20s when I was going through divorce and I had 2 children and I had a partner who had some serious issues that were really going on that I was absolutely devastated by and just really wished that it could have been different. And I was working 2 jobs. I had a full-time job, a part-time job. I was going through my master's program. I was in my clinicals. I mean, I was burning the candle at both ends. My day was starting at 4:30 in the morning. It was ending at 1 in the morning. And it was like for an entire semester. And I literally worked myself into panic attacks, depression, the whole 9, trying to hold it all together. And everybody was like, Spirit, you're a rock star. Like, how? Like, how do you do it all? And they did not realize that I was in survival mode because I was just literally fighting for my life. Everything that I was doing was so important to me that I didn't want to let any of it go. I saw what the time frames were, and I just wanted to hit every mark. And it almost killed me recognizing that those marks were arbitrary, that those marks did not matter. And what was more important was saving myself and finding my own pace. And when you can do it that way, it also makes the journey so much richer because you can be present for it. You know, I always say, I don't want to get to the end of my life and then get to, whatever it's going to be. And it's like, wait, that was over? Wait, I didn't even get a chance to like it. I didn't feel, I need to go back. I need more time. Right. And unfortunately, at least as far as we know, we don't get more time. So it is, how do you slow it down in order to savor it? How do you decide what you want to feel in the experiences so then you can decide and recognize what it's going to take to feel that, right? So many of my clients that are exhausted, they go, Spirit, I just want to feel peace. And I'm like, okay, but show me how you're prioritizing that in your life. Because if you want to feel peace, but everything you're choosing is chaos, what would you have to actively change in order to really center your peace? And what would you have to say? What would you have to do in order to recognize when something is about to take you out of your peace or already has, for you to go, this is disruptive to my peace. I got to tell you no. This is disruptive to my peace. I have to take that class next semester. This is disruptive to my peace. I have to leave this relationship. This is disruptive to my peace. I cannot pick up the phone in this moment, right? Like, how do you get so dedicated to the peace? And then the cool thing is that once you get there, it's like fresh air where you will not walk away from it because you can't. Your body will just be like, no. And you'll be like, can't do it. So how do you just look at where you are to go, I don't have to have it all together. Nobody has it all together, because the reality is we are all just winging it. We have all just gotten to where we are today. None of us have been here today. We are all our oldest selves today. This is the oldest that we've ever been, and this is the youngest that we're ever going to be. We are all winging it in this moment. And when you realize that, you can relieve the pressure of looking to the person to the left or to the right to go, hell, they don't know either. And if they are where I want to be, let me just humble myself to ask them, how did they get there? And if they can really be genuine enough to say, how are you feeling in this moment? For them to go, oh yeah, it's hard and I'm tired and I'm exhausted and I want to let some things go. But also recognize that they're not making a choice to, and you can choose whatever life you want for yourself. And that's what's most important.
This is the first time and the only time we'll do this thing called life, right?
Oh,
I love the advice.
Come on.
Slow down, be
Yes.
still.
Savor the moment. Like I tell my clients, get something that you really love, put it in your mouth and go slow. The taste, the texture, the smells, how your body feels, the thoughts that are running through your mind. And that's how we should be living life. The thing that makes us go, oh, yeah. And if it's not giving you that, if it's giving you the, oh, I gotta, then that is your job to change that. Because your body will tell you how you're experiencing things. And your job as the driver to your soul is to take care of you. And if you listen, your body will tell you, this works for me. This is the experience I want to have, or this ain't it. And your job is to respond and adjust when this ain't it, right? We could live so differently if we would just really pay attention to what's going on internally, but we're disconnected from it because of all of the trauma. It hurts too much to feel any of it, so we can't even savor it. And that's where the healing work comes. That's where the therapy comes, to
Beautifully
pull
said.
it back slowly.
Beautifully said.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
Pleasure.
Amazing conversation.
Yes.
And I'm so lucky that we got to tap into your expertise.